Hi und herzlich willkommen zu einer kleinen Simulator. Es ist auch erst nur die Demo-Version davon. Autopsy Simulator. Und ich glaube, da kann ich ein bisschen was aufschneiden. Ich bin gespannt. New Game. Ich weiß auch nicht, wie lang es geht. Wie gesagt, es ist nur die Demo. Das Spiel kommt irgendwann, denke ich, das Jahr raus.
No, do not call me anymore. It's none of my business.
Ah ja, und ich hoffe, es kommt dann auf Deutsch auch raus. Jetzt habe ich auch gar nicht gelesen, was er jetzt gesagt hat. Ja, erstmal nicht rauchen, ja, würde ich sagen. Extra strong. Wie 10 Stück. Ey, 10 Stück in der Schachtel. Weißt du, wie lange das her ist? Das mal Zigarettenschachteln klappt mit 10 Stück. Ey, das ist ja ewig her. Also es ist nichts Neues, ne? Aber ja, das gab's mal früher. Ich kenne sogar noch Geschichten, da konntest du hingehen und konntest eine Zigarette kaufen. Also keine Schachtel, eine einzelne Zigarette.
Oh, the cops from Steven's visit yesterday. I don't think he likes my coffee. He barely took a sip.
Was sagt er?
Oh, the cops from Steven's visit yesterday.
Oh, ja, ja,
I
natürlich.
don't think he likes my coffee.
Ah,
He
da
barely
ist er
took a
gekauft.
sip.
Ah, ja, ja, ja. Ah. Der hat ja. Oh, Tickets wohl für Aerosmith. Okay. Gut. Überhaupt nicht meine Richtung, aber 91. 91? Ja, okay, da könnte es solche Schachteln gegeben haben, ja. Just a reminder, I'm seeing you on Friday. Das liest sich ja doch Englisch vor, um Gottes Willen. Oh, wer ist das? Der Liebste? Oder Liebster? Hey Alice. How much I miss... Oh, I miss you. I miss you too. Oh yeah. Ja, stell hin das Ding, mein Gott.
Oh shit. It's only Thursday.
Ja, scheiße, ja. Scheiße, Donnerstag. Könnte aber am Montag sein. Na, dann haut er erstmal einen Schluck rein. Kann man den einschenken? Ach, da muss man erst oben aufmachen, ne? Wo guckt denn der jetzt alles an? Kann ich das nicht irgendwie... Rotate? Exit. Lauf doch erstmal die zu Ende da. Oh, schön, ja, ja, ja. Ja, schön, schön. Ja, keine Ahnung, also. Ah, leg's hin.
How am I supposed to record a lecture for the students now? Feeling completely broken.
Alter, der ist doch total hacke, der Typ, oder?
I'm gonna go nuts if I don't take my pills.
Look for your pills. Bathroom. Bathroom. Geh mal in den Bathroom. Da, pack das mal ein. Was? How to break out of this vicious cycle. Ja, der Typ ist fertig, ey. Der ist ja voll durch. Mal Musik an.
I really need to fix them.
Oh, jetzt hat der ein kaputtes Radio. Ach, warte mal. Man kann ja auch raus. Warum leckt denn das hier schon wieder so? Echt? Kann man sich auch bücken? Nee. Naja. Kann man hier auch alle Schubladen aufmachen? Ja, prima. Haben wir jetzt da gerade eingezogen, oder was? Naja, okay. Sorry. War eine blöde Frage. Sich da jetzt was suchen, oder wie?
It's for my guests, but they seem to never drink or say anything when they visit me.
Ja, ja. Okay, vermisst. Into day. Ja, komm. Geh mal ins mein Gott. Bathroom. Mein Gott, was ist denn los? Ist das so aufwendig, das Spiel? Sorry. Ich glaube, das muss aus, oder? Wird's dann besser? Achso, im Bad, okay.
Fuck. Where are my meds?
Keine Ahnung, weiß ich doch nicht, wo deine Pillen sind. Da sind sie doch. Da hat heute einen Schluck Wasser genommen. Hab's doch genau gehört. War aus was? Pam, pam, pam. Zähne putzen? Ja, dann mal Zahnbürste da. Eieiei. Taschenlampe gibt's ja auch nicht. Geh mal kacken. Nee, komm, mach doch mal Sitzung. Oh, hier kannst du ja alles anklicken, ne?
All right. Now we can go get the camera.
Kamera? Be pain, do not enter. Ach, das... Ja, erstmal abreißen von der Tür. Ja, geil.
It's locked.
Ja, ach, mach Sachen. Wird ja gestrichen.
It makes no sense without the camera.
Oh, was für eine Kamera. Rennen kann er auch nicht. Das reißen wir auch noch schnell ab. Oh, geht ja schon wieder los. Ach, go to the storage. Da steht's ja. Mein Gott.
Oh, this place is starting to look like a garbage dump rather than a storage room.
Keine Ahnung, was du sagst.
Well, I hope I won't forget to press the record button this time.
Der ist ja wie ich. Geil. Dann mach doch mal Licht an, genau. Na. Gut.
Let's move on straight to our deceased.
Okay. Ah, da liegt er schon.
How the new tripod is going to work. Just frame it properly and... Oh, this should be fine.
Ja, bist du zufrieden? Okay.
November 21st, 1991. Time, 8:43 p.m. Recording for medical students from the University of Missouri. The autopsy is conducted by Jack Hammond. Ladies and gentlemen, it is always worth having a look at the files before conducting the autopsy. That is where we can find all kinds of clues to what could have potentially happened to the deceased.
Warum ist denn sein Schniepel so lila? Oh. Achso. Der hat schon Spaß am Job, oder?
Well, who do we have here today? Mention the rookie mistakes. Oh yeah, that's right. That's my warrant to sensify you for a few issues. First, due to the fact that in the process of revealing and securing forensic traces, interference that changes the primary condition happens. The photographic documentation plays a huge role in the entire process of examination. Then, the body needs to be placed on its back on the autopsy table. The pathomorphologist stands on the left-hand side of the body. Third, very rarely but still, the cause of death remains unknown if all the tests come out negative. That's the so-called white autopsy. Now remember that it can also happen.
Yes.
Found on the outskirts of a parking lot near a gas station, where he often begged and insistently offered to clean the windows of cars that were leaving the station. The body was found in a dry field drain. A frequent cause of traumatic deaths among the elderly is the various types of accidents, including traffic accidents or falling down the stairs. The body was spotted by a station worker during the morning shift. At first, he thought that someone had thrown rain boots and a coat in a nearby ditch. It took him a moment to recognize a human body laying on its back. Signs of libation could be found around the dead body. Empty bottles, traces of an inept attempt to start a fire, and a scattered makeshift blanket.
Ja.
The deceased is locally known as Old Toby. Homeless and unemployed for at least a couple years. He had gotten into fights and had been bullied by the problematic youth of the town. He was that type of a man who never kept off alcohol, which caused him to be homeless. As a young man working in a suburban coal mine most of his life, he already abused alcohol, and as the time went by, he'd fall into addiction more That's interesting. Although alcohol poisoning as a sole cause of death among the elderly people is relatively rare, different levels of alcohol poisoning happen among 1 in 4 deaths of elderly people, which may suggest that alcohol abuse is a significant issue in this age group. What is important to note, even though alcohol poisoning does not cause death, it does increase the risk of accidents and their following injuries.
Alter, ist das eine Labertasche? Kann das sein?
The body was found at 7 o'clock by Sheriff Matthew Thompson. White male, 76 kilograms, 5'8", age unknown. The deceased is a local homeless man named Toby Chambers. His son runs a hardware store. His wife ran away years ago. Local police have talked to residents, so we know more about the deceased. For example, that he loved drinking, and by no means was abstinent. Such clues can direct us to things that are worth keeping in mind during the autopsy.
Darf ich jetzt mal das Rumschnippeln anfangen?
Found on the outskirts
Nein.
of a parking lot near a gas station.
Liegt dort hin. Halt die Klappe. So.
Oh,
Oh.
the damn gloves.
Donuts. Beiß halt mal einen rein. Was find and put the gloves on. Würden die jetzt rumliegen? Ach, gerade eben konnte ich alles aufmachen und jetzt gar nichts mehr. Ach, da sind sie doch.
Now we can get to work. We're going to need the camera. It should be here somewhere.
Na, da ist ja die Kamera. Die ist ja jetzt nicht schwer zu finden, oder? So, eine andere. Lampe. Ach, da schmiert er immer sein Brötchen damit. Also nach der Obduktion natürlich, ne?
Must have left it in one of the drawers.
Was? Ach so, da. Mach doch mal auf und nicht zu. Dann mal reingucken.
I
Don't want to disturb the neighbors.
don't want to disturb the neighbors.
Oh,
I don't want...
da hängt doch was. Technik, was? Out of order. Techniken is coming to see it on, bald.
I don't want to disturb the neighbors. I don't want to disturb the neighbors.
Welche Nachbarn? Bescheuert? Ja, so komm. Jetzt, Feind der Kamera. Ach, hier. Nee. Welche Kamera? Admin, Passwort Admin 1. Ja, ist ja auch geil. Das ist das gleiche, das ich immer habe.
I don't know how it could have worked without this gadget before.
Machen wir Musik
No
an.
music today. I don't want it to jam me.
Oh Gott. Also ich weiß nicht, was der hier für eine Kamera sucht. Aber hier ist definitiv keine. Ich fange jetzt hier an mit dem Aufschneiden. Oh, das bewegt sich ein wenig schnell. Moment. Wo ist er schon voll unten? Okay. Kann ich den jetzt aufschneiden? Wo eigentlich? Soll ihn beschneiden oder was? Find der Kamera. Ist doch da. Es geht ja schon mal gut los, ne? This room.
We'll get to making notes on the board.
Ah ja, okay. Ah.
Let's follow the procedure and prepare photo documentation. We must follow the top-down rule. Luckily, we don't have to take pictures of the clothes this time. We are only focusing on the body. Let's keep in mind it's all about the legibility, not the perfect frame. Before we start searching for traces on the deceased's body, we have to take a main picture that goes in the files. Voila! Now we move on to the next step. Trace search. We're going to need better zoom here. More. And that's perfect.
Ja, das, ne? Stimmt das? Okay. Oh, sorry. Da hat er hier was mit dem Auge. Nee, möchte nicht fotografieren. Ja, der will den Schniepel. Ih. Hätte ich mich jetzt... Hat er sich selbst umgebracht? Hätte ich dann auch
People
gemacht.
affected by homelessness most often die from accidents, alcohol abuse, or they freeze to death. Unfortunately, both suicide and homicide are also quite common.
Was doch? Ja? Suizid? Okay. Ja, scheiße, ne, wenn man es nicht... Das fotografiere ich nicht. Was hat er noch für Probleme? Da. Hat er eine Beule, hä?
Well, you don't have to stand close to be able to smell a strong odor of alcohol and other discharges. There's nothing left to say. Old Toby didn't spare himself. While taking the photos, some entries that could be potentially lethal caught my attention. Let's take a closer look using the magnifying glass.
Hä? Ah, darf ich jetzt schnippeln? Was? Tools. Ah. Da,
I
da.
don't need this tool now.
Wieso?
I don't need this tool now. There are frostbite marks all over the deceased's body. Although they are most visible on the tips of his fingers, they can be recognized by the very specific color of the skin. However, the hands tell us much more.
Hmm?
An old wound that hadn't healed properly. It must have been some kind of burn or other injury. Nevertheless, it has nothing to do with the potential cause of death. By the look of his feet, I assume Toby must have worn uncomfortable and dinky shoes for quite a while. However, such wounds have nothing to do with his death. That's something interesting. While making photographic documentation, ecchymosis can be seen on the deceased man's head. The appearance indicates the intravital nature of the wound. We'll come back later to see if everything is all right with the brain. What do we have here?
Kann man das noch ein bisschen kleiner schreiben?
The condition of the head tells us it could have been a fatal accident. It could be freezing to death. Yeah, the odor can be the result of alcohol intoxication. An old wound that hadn't healed properly. It must have been some kind of burn or other injury. Nevertheless, it has nothing to do with the potential cause of death. By the look of his feet, I assume Toby must have worn uncomfortable and dinky shoes for quite a while. However, such wounds have nothing to do with his death.
Also hier hast du nichts zu sagen, ne?
A frequent cause of dramatic deaths among the elderly is the various types of accidents, including traffic. At this point,
Yeah,
that's all I can do based on all traces on the body of the deceased. The inside should tell me much more. Now let's check the level of muscle tension. This will allow us to establish time of death. Let's raise the deceased's hand. And then let go. The stronger the rigor mortis gets, the greater the resistance from the muscles will be. As you can see, the hand falls loose. The rigor mortis has already subsided. We can then assume that the time of death stated in the files is correct.
Yes.
Let's grab a scalpel.
Ja, Skalpell, alles klar. Da bin ich dabei. Da.
You can boldly cut with the scalpel.
Ui.
It won't hurt him no more. We always start with the neck and move down towards the symphysis pubis. The incision should be deep.
Och, Mensch. Nein, nein! Oh. Nochmal. Das da. Dann zoomen. Und da schneiden.
Next, we separate the skin and prepare to remove the ribs.
Was? Choosing the hand. Hä? Ja, das lass offen.
The adipose tissue has an intense yellow hue. As you probably already guessed, we're going to need the scissors.
Take the loopers. Das Ding. Oh. Schneide ich dem jetzt das echt durch? Oh,
After
pfui.
removing both cartilage and bone tissues, we are actually interested in two things that you can see at the very first glance. The lack of organ congestion means that, although the deceased was cold, hypothermia wasn't the cause of death.
Ja. Hm? Ja. Ihr habt doch alles, oder?
We can eliminate freezing as the cause of death.
Was Freezing? An
That's
dem lag's nicht aus.
interesting. Frostbite in New Orleans. Actually, the weather this fall has been surprisingly nasty.
Die Lungen rausnehmen. Och, die reißt du einfach mal so raus.
The deceased smoked like a chimney. Let's take a closer look. We see widespread black and tarry deposits caused by smoking cigarettes. Despite the tragic condition of the lungs, they are not the cause of death.
Was? Die sehen doch gut aus, ja? Achso, hätte ich da jetzt irgendwas machen können?
The deceased smoked like a chimney. Let's take a closer look. We see widespread black and tarry deposits caused by smoking cigarettes. Despite the tragic condition of the lungs, they are not the cause of death.
Also die sind nicht dran schuld. Ja, also gut. Also Rauchen ist nicht schuld, hat er gesagt. Zumindest nicht bei dem. Ah, was ist damit? Was soll ich denn jetzt schon wieder nehmen?
Now we need to go grab the syringe.
Syringe. Was ist ein Syringe? Ah,
At this point, we need to test the level of blood alcohol concentration of the deceased.
okay.
We move on to collecting blood from the heart. 5 milliliters from the left ventricle should do it. Now, we prick the bladder and draw about 10 milliliters of fluid.
Wo nehmen wir jetzt das Blut her? Das vom Auge.
We also collect the fluid from the deceased to determine the level of alcohol concentration in the vitreous humor. Keep in mind that you have to set the right time and speed on both knobs before running the centrifuge. Our samples may break into pieces due to the centrifugal force if we set up the wrong coordinates. I myself am terrible with numbers because I suffer from dyscalculia, which is why I always keep the appropriate coordinates at hand.
Was? Note from the pin? Ach du Scheiße. Ah, da. 40 Minuten, 75%. Alles klar. Ist ja nicht gleich dahin kleben können, oder? Wie stellt man das ein? Nee, da ist 40. So. So, oder? Und dann 5. Oh, kann man das nicht irgendwie beschleunigen? Ah, so. Was hat er gesagt? 75%. Ja, besser kriege ich es nicht hin. Okay. Ja, Start. Oh, was ist nur schon wieder dein Problem? Stimmt doch alles. E. Drück doch E. Ja, sorry. Also bitte. Das ist nicht exakt 75%. Jetzt geht hier das Licht
Damn
aus.
it. If something goes to shit, it's all the way. That's probably the blown fuses again. Hold up. I must have had a flashlight somewhere.
Ja, du bleibst hier liegen. Ich bin gleich wieder da, ja? Wenn du weg bist, kriegst du Probleme.
Ugh, and I was hoping to clock out early today. What was that?
Das ist das
Go.
bescheuert. Sei blöde Katze gewesen. Mein Gott.
Yeah, it's definitely the fuses.
Wieso hast du jetzt das Licht ausgemacht?
Right goes first, left next. Voila. Where's that unbearable noise coming from?
Ich dachte, das ist ein Autopsy-Simulator.
That's strange. I'm pretty sure I closed the window.
So geht das Radio.
The homeless probably misses me already. I borrowed it from Stephen. Since Alice died, Stephen is the only person I trust.
Ja, dein Glück, dass du noch da liegst. Denn das Radio angemacht.
Well, alright. Let's see what we've got here.
Jetzt hat es natürlich nicht funktioniert, oder?
Well, everything is telling us that the BAC, blood alcohol concentration, is high. Hence the smell we're getting from the deceased. Still, to be 100% sure, I have to send the samples to the lab. Unfortunately, I don't have the equipment to conduct a detailed analysis here.
Ach, die anderen schaust du jetzt noch gar nicht an.
Now let's take a closer look at the stomach.
Den soll ich rausnehmen? Ah, den da. Okay. Was will er denn sehen? Wenn er irgendwas sieht, dann geht der Stellari-Balken da. Ah, da war was.
As expected, the stomach has no major external damage. In this case, further inspection is no use. We must cut him open.
Ach so. Hä, wie denn nur? So, nach oben. Oh, oh Gott. Ja, ja, wie beim Brötchen schmieren, ne? Nee. Komm mir grad. Was fliegt denn da runter? Komm mal grad vor wie beim heißen Draht, echt? Oh, mein Mauspad ist zu Ende. Moment. Geht das jetzt auch noch auf Zeit oder was? Nee. Oh, das war knapp. Warum kommt denn jetzt das Ding da hinten so schnell? Wächst es wieder zu oder was? So. Und nun?
That's interesting. In addition to a large amount of gas and liquid, the stomach also contains small amounts of yellow-grayish food content resembling some kind of meat. Either our deceased hadn't eaten in days, or some of the bulk of his stomach had found a way out. Oh, it couldn't have been suffocation, could it? Now we need to focus on the cardiovascular system, especially the heart. We take the organ and look it up and down, carefully.
Hm?
At first glance, the heart looks fine. The pulmonary trunk and aorta seem to be in good condition. There are no pathological changes that have contributed to our Toby's death. Well, once we've got the body ticked off, we can move on to the head.
Ach.
Let's take the autopsy saw to cut through the skull to cleave it in two. Remember, the skull, not the saw. Anyway, we will start dissecting the brain from the occipital lobe. In this way, the brain's dura mater is slowly revealing itself.
Ja, wie denn? Ach so. Mein Gott, ich sehe gar nichts. Ich muss auf die blöden Balken gucken. Ui. Ja, und flutsch. Nur ist es draußen. Eklig
After the
eigentlich.
basic
Echt.
examination, we can see that the cerebral gyri in both brain hemispheres are symmetric and the bumps between them are clear. So far, so good. The hematoma seems to have had no effect on the organ. Holding a knife with a long, narrow blade in your dominant hand, cut the cranial nerves on both sides, pulling the brain towards you.
Hä? Was? Hoch? Okay, und runter oder was? Oder hätte ich erst nach unten gesollt? Ach ja, und jetzt hoch. Na super. Ja, warte mal. Ist es aber nicht mehr markiert. Super. Ja, ist aber schon ein bisschen daneben geschnitten. Das wird ihn, glaube ich, nicht mehr stören. Ach so, wenn es rot ist, zählt's nicht, oder wie? Oh, bitte will mich doch echt verarschen, ne? Schneide das Ding halt einfach durch.
Remember, just one small fragment examined under the magnifying glass is enough to dispel or confirm our doubts. We then take the fragment of the brain to the tray and, literally and figuratively, go over it with a fine-tooth comb.
Ja, was? Das ist einfach nur
Just as I
ein
initially
bisschen...
we can rule the fatal
Scheiße.
accident out as well.
Moment. Bitte, ganz kurz. Nein, stopp. Ich habe ja nur meine Maus voll Schokolade geschmiert. Weil es gerade so nervenaufreibend ist.
We now come to the deceased's neck.
Oh. Wollte das einfach raus, ey.
Same as we did with the stomach. External inspection didn't tell us anything. Now, while cutting a small organ, such as the trachea, we must perform a precise incision. To be able to cut with the very typical blood. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've got it. Based on the report and preliminary documentation, it is safe to assume that the deceased passed out after consumption of alcohol and then fell asleep on his back. Then the gastric contents refluxed and flooded the airways, causing death. That's why we don't forget about the recovery position at dorm parties.
Schon krass eigentlich, ne?
And now it's all clear. The death was caused by suffocation.
Okay. General card.
A frequent cause of traumatic deaths among the elderly is the various types of accidents, including traffic accidents or falling down the stairs.
Huch.
It went quite smoothly today. I'm about to get off.
Close the chest. Achso, ich muss ihn wieder zumachen. Aha.
In order to bring the chest of our deceased back to its initial state, at least to a small extent, we must take the needle in our hand. We sewed the deceased using the baseball stitch technique. This stitching method is very strong and quick to do.
Wer ruft denn jetzt an?
I should probably get to that. I'm coming.
Der Typ ist geil. Ja.
Dr. Jack Hanman. Please leave a message.
Ich bin auch schon da.
Good evening. How are you? How are you? How are you?
What the f is that supposed to be? I'll finish the stitching and I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Alter. Ich gehe da nimmer zu... Also die haben ja hier voll... Glück habe ich hier eine Tafel Schokolade. Ne, ich gehe da nicht hin zu dem. Mal die Tür zu. War das vorhin schon da, ja. Der Horrorspiel. Können jetzt auch einfach Feierabend machen. Elke. Wo ist denn der hin?
What the fuck?
Alter. Ja, zum Glück war das nur eine Demo, also echt. Also ich dachte jetzt wirklich, das ist ein Simulator und kein Horrorspiel. Aber das auf Deutsch bin ich auf jeden Fall da wieder mit dabei. Da mache ich mit. Das wird interessant, da freue ich mich drauf. Demo war gut. Also, bis demnächst.